Good evening, friends. It's very, very nice for Devi and me to be here again doing this Gita Satsang that has been going on for so long. Because of COVID, we were prevented from coming for several years. And so one of the last times we gave a Gita Satsang, it was at the little house where we were all crowded in and people had to sit out in the courtyard kind of leaning in, and how much nicer it is to be in this wonderful new center. But what a very, very fine tradition this is of having a weekly satsang on the Bhagavad Gita. It really, everything we need to know as devotees is contained in the Gita, and our job is to, I guess, mine that ore, that gold, out of the mine of the Gita. And honestly, without the guidance of Master and the interpretation of this line of masters, I don't think we could really understand enough of the Gita to really begin to draw from it. I remember someone years ago, after the essence of the Bhagavad Gita came out, they made a wonderful comment. I've always remembered. They said, I grew up in a household where we read the Gita every day. We worshipped it. It was as if it were a murti, and we poured milk on that murti, and said, that wonderful though that is, now that I have Master's interpretations, as Swamiji wrote them out, now that I have the essence of the Bhagavad Gita, for the first time, I'm able to drink that milk. And so to partake of the deep wisdom of the Gita is very important. Let me just explain this, lest people are wondering. Yesterday I had a very little procedure done in order to relieve some tension on a ligament. So they had to make a little cut, and all of this is just with the dual purpose of protecting that wound for the first few days while it heals, and then the second purpose is to elicit sympathy from all of my friends. So, but on to the passage from the Gita. I'm going to read from chapter 8. This is shloka 7. Therefore, remember me throughout life and fight the battle of right action. Surrender to me your mind and understanding. In so doing so, you will, without a doubt, come to me. In many ways, this is the summation of the Gita, to fix our mind and our understanding on God. And if we can do that and hold that consciousness, everything else in life will take care of itself. All the problems, all the worries, all the relationships, all of that is really nothing more than a matrix for our consciousness to gradually be able to do just what that passage says, to fix our mind and our understanding and live with right action. So Master points out, Swamiji in the essence of the Bhagavad Gita, that many people reading this passage, fix your mind and understanding on me, they think that that's just a relatively meaningless repetition. Mind and understanding are the same thing. In fact, they are not the same thing. The mind is that which receives impressions from the world around. The understanding is that which interprets. So what Krishna is saying here is fix your mind on me, fix the implements of your senses, the instruments of your senses on me, because if your senses are receiving something that is reminding you of me, then when you're that's in the interpretation that Master had of what the elements of our consciousness are. There's mon, which is that mind which is receiving the sensations. That's different from understanding. Understanding is buddhi, and understanding then takes those impressions and interprets it. I won't go into it, but then the way Master explained it is if you're looking at a field and you see this field with a white fence around it, and in the field is a white horse and grazing on the grass, the mind simply takes that in. It's like a television set. It simply sees that picture and presents it. The buddhi aspect of us interprets that and says, oh, that's a horse, that's a fence, that's green grass, that horse is white, it's young and it's healthy and so on. And then ahankara comes in, which is the ego principle. And this is, Master said, mon is located here, buddhi here, ahankara at the ego principle at the medulla, and the medulla, ego principle, ahankara, looks at that and says, oh, that's my horse, that's my fence, my grass. But Master said we still aren't caught yet. We still aren't really grasped by delusion, because then chitta comes in and says, oh, I love my horse. I never want to lose my horse. My neighbor better not take my horse, and so on. And it's that feeling element that gets us caught. That's why in Patanjali, he says, yogas chitra vritti nirod. Yoga, union with God, occurs naturally when that element of chittva, the desire, the likes and dislikes, the whirlpools of likes and dislikes, when those are neutralized, then we go automatically into a state of yoga. We think that it's just by overcoming ego. Yes, it is overcoming ego. But first, we have to overcome and begin to neutralize our likes and dislikes. Until we do that, we can't overcome the ego. And even after overcoming the ego, there's still work to be done, because we still have delusions that we retain. And so it is that this advice cuts through all of that. If we can truly fix our mind and our understanding and our actions and our desire on God, or on the form of God that is precious to us, then everything else in life begins to come into its own natural relationship. You know, most of the time, most people are focused deeply on trying to attain something. Remember chittva? If it's active, the likes and dislikes. Most people, most of the time, their entire energy is in trying to obtain that which they desire or avoid that which they don't want. And if you were able to examine the thoughts, Master said we have about 1,000 thoughts each day, major thoughts. If you were to examine those, the vast majority of those thoughts, other than, maneuvering through life, the vast majority will be trying to obtain our likes, our desires, or avoid that which we don't want to avoid, don't want. So what is the way out of that? Because when we're caught in that web, naturally we're going to be filled with anxiety, because it is the nature of this world that it is constantly in flux. And so the world being constantly in flux will seem to be fulfilling our desires one day, and then we think, oh, wonderful, wonderful, and it will be avoiding pain for us, and we'll think, wonderful, wonderful, and then the next day it'll be the opposite. We'll be fighting against the problems of life where we don't obtain what we desire, and we do obtain what we don't want to have happen. We have to go in for an operation and deal with that. So the way to cut through that all is to have, as much as possible, the mind and the actions set upon the one goal, one true goal that drives us all, which is the desire for union with God. There's a beautiful passage from an Upanishad that says, we are that which we deepest, that which is our deepest desire. Because our desire, our deepest desire, creates our intention. Our intention creates our will. Our will creates our action, and our action creates our destiny. And so that which we're hungering for, that which we're wanting, that desire becomes what will motivate us and what will fix our purpose in life. And so our job is more and more to try to make this chant, door of my heart, open wide, I keep for thee. Wilt thou come? Wilt thou come? Just for once come to me. To make that desire real and actual, and to become the single most important thing in our life. And as we do that, everything else falls away. You know, we all have difficulties, we all have flaws, we all have things where we have misactions and misperceptions. My friends, we will not achieve enlightenment by pushing away the negativity. As Swami puts it in a song, you can't drive out darkness with a stick. With a stick. Turn on the light and all those shadows go away. So yes, if we're misbehaving, that also is in there, that we have to do right action. If we're misbehaving, we have to stop that. But more importantly, we should focus on doing everything we can to create deeper and deeper desire, true, sincere, authentic desire in our heart for union with God. We do that through meditation, through chanting, through satsang, through all of the aspects of the spiritual path. This passage that I just read is preceded by another very famous passage, which is Krishna says that that thought that is uppermost in our mind at the time of death will determine our next birth. And so I heard a joke recently that's very good. So there was a man who had read that and knew that passage existed in the Bhagavad Gita. So he thought, this is a kind of a greedy merchant, but he thinks, oh, I know what I'm going to do if I can just keep my mind on God at the time of passing, then I'll be free. And so he says cleverly, I'll name each of my children after the name of God, and they'll be around me as I die, and I'll be looking at them, and I'll be thinking Krishna or Rama or Durga or Gita or all of my children I'll name after God, and then at the time of death my mind will be fixated on God. And so the time of passing comes, and he's just in his last moments, and all of his children are around him. And he's saying, oh, it's so wonderful to have you here, Rama and Krishna and Durga and Vishnu. And oh, it's so wonderful. All of you are here. Who's minding the store? Then he passes away. So we can't fool the divine. We can't fix our mind on God at the final moment unless we fix our mind on God throughout our life. So that, my friends, is really the challenge of life, is to do everything, and each of us will have our own mix of ways. Some are more devotional, some are more thoughtful, some are more with action. Each of us, that's why God creates all of the different paths of yoga, each which will bring us to union with God. But all of them are meant with one single thing, and that is eventually to wipe away all other lesser desires until there is one desire remaining, which is to unite with God. When we can live more in that state, we will also reap the benefit of being able to live without anxiety, to be able to live in a world as we're living in now that is turbulent and filled with negativity and problems and all of that. It'll have no more effect on us than us sitting here, and yes, there's some noise out there on the street, honking of cars, horns and cars. That doesn't bother us. Our mind in this satsang is fixed on God. So all of those lesser things will just pass into the background. Our hearts will become equalized and calm and filled with the one desire, which is to reunite with our only true beloved.
So, good evening, friends. We're so happy that we have this time with you. Jyotish and I have been in India now since mid-September, and we'll be returning to the U.S. in 2 weeks. We'll go to Chennai this weekend for their temple dedication, then come back here for a few days, and then go on to Mumbai for our last week. But we're so glad that we can have this satsang tonight to thank all of you, first of all, for the extraordinary effort you all put out for the 20th anniversary. Really, we have been a part of Ananda for many years. It was one of the most memorable events I've ever been part of, and in large part because of all of you and everything you did, and many others as well. And we've just had such nice times with so many of you, and even if briefly, it's just been very, very meaningful to us. And I was looking around the room, and I thought, if we had Romesh and Ramu, you all could put on the play tonight. You've got all the other characters are here. And speaking of Jewel in the Lotus, that was just so extraordinary. And we were sitting, the front rows were just all families and children on the ground, no chairs. And then we were sitting right behind that. And it was just like we were in a village, in a temple in the village, and the players had come through to do a story from Mahabharata or Ramayana. And anyway, it was so precious to us. So thank you all, and thank you for the beautiful, beautiful spirit here. So I'm going to share just briefly, following on what Jyotish talked about, but with a slightly different emphasis. This is from chapter 6. The tranquil sage who has conquered the lower egoic self abides ever in the Supreme Self. He views with equanimity all the dualities, cold and heat, pleasure and pain, praise and blame. The yogi who is blissfully absorbed in the wisdom of the self is known as being unshakably united to spirit, unchangeable, the controller of his senses. He views with equal mind a clod of earth, a stone, and a bar of gold. He is a supreme yogi who gazes equally upon patrons, friends, enemies, strangers, peacemakers, those who cause trouble, relatives, the virtuous, and the ungodly. I often wondered why in the Gita those two are placed next to each other, those who cause trouble and relatives. But what Jyotish was talking about was keeping your consciousness focused and directed on God. But then there's the experiences of everyday life and the challenges they present. And that's where we have to be vigilant warriors, because it's easy to sit in meditation or be chanting and say, oh Lord, I'm thinking of you, I'm thinking of you. And then someone comes and does something that displeases us. What's wrong with you? And we react. And that's where the real test comes. Not in, well, I can meditate for many hours, but how we treat each other. If we see things in other people that we don't like, I beg you, friends, don't talk about them. Don't criticize others. Don't be judgmental. It only hurts yourself. I had a friend who told me an interesting story recently. She said that for many years there was a person, some old karmic pattern where they just didn't get along. There was rivalry, there was jealousy, all sorts of things. And it went both ways. And our friend decided that I am just not going to talk negatively about this person to anyone. I am done with that. It's not helping them, and it's certainly not helping me. And she did this for many months, and she began to feel a shift in her consciousness. She would see the other person, and she felt inner detachment. And she would look at the person and she would see their good qualities rather than their bad qualities. She said, I couldn't control sometimes my negative thoughts, but I could control my words. And I just stopped speaking negatively. And that is a transforming experience. If we can stop speaking negatively. Once there was a man who was very critical of Swamiji, and Swami had many of them in his life. He never reacted. He never spoke against them. He never gossiped or went behind their back. But one time there was a man who was very much that way, very negative towards Swami. And then there was some big gathering, and we were standing near to Swami, and he went up to this man, and we saw this man enter the room, and we thought, oh, he's a problem. But Swami went right up to him and took his hands, and he said, friend, I might be the devil incarnate, but it's not your problem. Live in happiness and acceptance of all. And the man didn't know what to do with that, and he did end up leaving Ananda. But there was never any holding on to judgment or hurt, always with freedom, always with acceptance. And it was just beautiful to behold. But as my friend told me that story, she said, I feel like I'm free of it now. This thing that haunted me for years, simply by zipping the lip, as they say in America, not speaking negatively, I found freedom from that. So I offer you this advice. Just if there's someone that you feel critical of, offer it to God. Don't talk about it to others. It only hurts you, and to be honest, it diminishes you in the eyes of the people that you're speaking with. So it's a very good self-discipline. Swami told us once he had a dream in which, he said it was a superconscious dream, in which there was a man that he had antagonistic relationship probably for many lifetimes. In one lifetime, one would be dominant, the next lifetime the other would be dominant, and back and forth it went. Until finally, similar to what my friend did, he just said, I am done with this. I can't change the other person, but I am done. And he woke up from the dream and he said, I felt free from some karma that had been obscuring my consciousness, blocking my happiness. And that's the point. The point is, as we live in the world in alignment with higher principles, we ourselves become happy. We ourselves become free. And will the world always align itself according to our likes and dislikes? I haven't seen that in my nearly 80 years of living. In fact, sometimes as a devotee, quite the opposite. That as once we say, God, I want you, he said, all right, let's work out your karma then. Here's this, and here's that, and here's this. And sometimes you say, could we just take a little break here? But he doesn't. He gives it to us. And again, watching Swami Kriyananda, he was so neutral in all circumstances. He had a lot of physical karma. In fact, someone asked him, he had a lot of health issues. Someone asked him once, Sir, are you working out other people's karma by all your illnesses? And he was such a humble, non-self-focused person. He wouldn't directly say yes, but what he said was, we all have to do our part. And he was saying my part was to be able to take on other people's karma. But we were with him once when he had bad arthritis in his hips. So he had one hip replacement, which is major surgery. Then he had the second hip replacement. Very, very fine doctor, very fine doctor. But then he started having pain in the first hip replacement. We went to the doctor, he took x-rays, and he said, oh, sir, I am so sorry, but the head of the bone is not resting right in the socket. We're going to have to do it over, a third hip surgery. And we were standing there with Swami. What would the normal person do? Oh, this is terrible. Couldn't you have done it right the first time? I have so much work to do, and now I have to take out months of my life to recuperate. Swami just looked at him like a child and said, when can we schedule the surgery, doctor? And this third surgery went fine, but it was so beautiful to see his equanimity. Oh, yeah. Someone gave him because he had 3 hip surgeries, somebody gave him a T-shirt that said, hip, 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 hooray! Yeah. But it was such a wonderful lesson to watch that ability to stay centered with friends and foe, people who cause trouble, relatives, inimical circumstances. This is part of life. But you know, we pay a price for the path to self-realization, for finding God. And the price we pay, the fee at the gate, is surrender of the ego. That's what we have to give to God. In fact, it's all we have to give to God, is just to say, I give it all to you in love and devotion. And so the more, it's the ego that reacts. It's the ego that says, I don't like this person and I'm going to say bad things about them. Or, this is a terrible situation. How could this be happening to me? I remember I had a very dear childhood friend who was a wise soul. We were friends met when we were 7 years old and friends for the rest of our life. But I remember once when we were teenagers. Another friend of ours was having some surgery, and she was a nice girl, but kind of self-involved. And we were visiting her in the hospital, and she was filled with self-pity. And she was saying, why is this happening to me? Why me? And my wise friend said, why not you? Which was not what she wanted to hear, but it's true. Why, when you say, why is this happening? Well, why not you? It has to happen. Just approach life with equanimity. All that happens. This is really the genius, the spiritual genius of India, and it's their gift to the world, the gift to the West, the gift to everywhere, is that they understand that behind the forms of life is a deeper reality. And the only way we break through from the delusion of this world, the light and the dark, the pleasure and the pain, the joy and the sorrow, the only way we break through is using the discipline to surrender the ego. And in all circumstances, with all people, we just say, this is God. I remain centered in myself no matter what happens. And I'll just close with this thought. We had the blessing many years ago of hearing a very saintly man, his name, give a talk. His name was Richard Wurmbrand. He was born in Romania, and he was born a Jew, and put in a concentration camp by the Nazis during World War II. And then he converted to Christianity. He just was inspired. And then he was imprisoned by the communists for being a Christian. He was in a terrible, for many years, I think it was about 10 years, he was in solitary confinement in this prison in Romania. And he was tortured and he was starved. But he survived because finally public outcry became so great. And we went to hear a lecture he gave. He was one of the most radiant human beings I've ever seen. His teeth had all been knocked out from being tortured or beaten. He had silver teeth. His back had been broken many times from beating, so he was kind of bent over. But he was radiant. I mean, there was just a light that flooded from him. And he told us of his experiences and how they would keep him in these dark cells with no light whatsoever for years. But then he got this, he told us, and he said, he got this beautiful smile, and he said, but you know, there's a light that shines in the darkness. And you could tell he had seen that light, the light of God, which shone in the darkness. So these great saints are role models for us. Whatever comes in your life, look for the light that shines in the challenge. Look for the light in the person that you have a negative reaction to. And the more we can just see that God's light in all people, in all circumstances, the more we will come to that state where we know why we incarnated. We incarnated to become one with God. And Master gave us the path, but we have to live it. And so, my friends, I urge you, live the life that you know is the highest one. Don't cave into lower impulses of the ego. It's the only way to freedom. God bless you.